My younger brother stole nearly $97,000 using my identity, but that was not the moment I stopped calling him family. I stopped when my mother asked me to smile beside him for a Thanksgiving photograph so his fiancée would not learn the truth. My father told me ruined credit could be repaired, but a man's reputation could not. My brother sat at the head of the table eating the sweet potatoes I had paid for and said I should be grateful he had not taken more. Then my mother slid a handwritten repayment plan beside my plate, as though forgery could be transformed into a family loan with enough gravy and guilt. Everyone waited for me to sign it. Instead, I placed my parents' spare house key on the table. I turned off the automatic payments that had quietly kept their lives comfortable for 6 years. I walked out before dessert without shouting, threatening, or exposing anyone online. By midnight, the family photograph had been posted with my chair cropped out, and the caption, "Nothing is stronger than forgiveness." By Christmas, every lie hidden behind that photograph had collapsed. My name is Claire Donovan. I was 36 years old when I discovered that the people who called me the responsible daughter had spent most of my life treating my stability like a family-owned resource. I lived outside Denver, Colorado, in a narrow brick townhouse, with a view of the foothills from the upstairs bedroom. I worked as a compliance manager for a large children's hospital, which meant I spent my days reviewing vendor payments, investigating billing irregularities, and asking uncomfortable questions whenever numbers did not match the story people wanted them to tell. I was not a detective, and I did not carry a badge. I was simply good at noticing when something felt arranged. A repeated invoice, a changed mailing address, a signature that looked too careful, a person who answered a simple question with a long explanation. At work, people joked that no one could hide $1 from me. At home, my family hid almost 97,000 of them beneath my name for 11 months. The first warning arrived on a rainy Monday evening in October. I had just returned from a 14-hour day helping the hospital resolve a payment error that had delayed several shipments of pediatric equipment. I was tired, hungry, and still wearing the navy dress I kept at work for meetings with senior administrators. My front porch light had burned out again. I remember thinking I should replace it before winter. There was a certified envelope wedged beneath my doormat and a delivery notice taped crookedly to the door. I carried everything inside, reheated soup, and opened the envelope while standing at the kitchen counter. The first page thanked me for my previous cooperation and demanded immediate payment on 3 delinquent accounts, totaling $41,280. I assumed it was a scam. The company name belonged to a national lender, but the account numbers meant nothing to me. Then I reached the second page. It listed my full legal name, the final digits of my social security number, my date of birth, my employer, and an address in Lakewood that I recognized immediately. It was my younger brother's apartment. His name was Owen Donovan. He was 31, charming when he needed something, funny when he was not cornered, and forever one promising opportunity away from becoming the man he insisted he already was. Owen had tried real estate photography, mobile car detailing, online fitness coaching, sports memorabilia sales, cryptocurrency trading, and a food delivery business that existed for 3 weeks and left our parents' garage filled with insulated bags. Each venture began with a logo, a social media announcement, and a speech about finally taking control of his life. Each ended with unpaid bills, bruised pride, and a new explanation for why the world had failed to recognize him. My parents called him creative. They called me practical. Those words sounded harmless when we were children. They became assignments as we grew older. Owen was allowed to dream. I was expected to repair the damage when the dream sent an invoice. Our mother, Diane, was 65 and had retired from managing the front office of a dental practice. She remembered birthdays, organized church fundraisers, and could make a table look beautiful with things purchased from a discount store. She also believed family problems became dangerous only when outsiders learned about them. Our father, Patrick, was 68. He had owned a residential painting company for 30 years, and still woke before sunrise even after selling it. Dad believed hard work could solve almost anything, though in practice he usually expected my hard work to solve whatever Owen had created. When Owen dropped out of community college, Dad said he needed time to find himself. When I changed majors because my scholarship required me to graduate on schedule, Dad said adulthood meant making sacrifices. When Owen lost his first apartment, my parents asked me to cover the deposit on the next one because I had savings. When I bought my townhouse, my mother told relatives it was proof that our family takes care of its own. No one mentioned that I had eaten canned soup for 2 years to build the down payment. Owen and I had not always been distant. As children, we built forts beneath our parents' dining table and raced bicycles down the hill behind our house. When he was 7, he followed me everywhere. When he was 12, I broke a boy's nose for mocking his stutter. When he was 16 and terrified after crashing Dad's truck into a mailbox, he called me before he called anyone else. I drove across town, stood beside him in the snow, and promised we would handle it together. Somewhere along the way, helping Owen stopped being something I chose and became the proof my family demanded whenever I wanted to believe I was a good sister. The certified letter was not the only warning. While I was reading it, my phone displayed an email confirming that the contact information on a retail financing account had been updated. I had never opened that account. Then another message arrived from a credit monitoring service I had forgotten I even subscribed to. My score had fallen by more than 100 points. New addresses had appeared. Several accounts were close to their limits. I sat at my kitchen counter while the soup cooled beside me and felt my life divide into a before and after. In the before, the letter was an error. In the after, someone knew enough about me to create a second financial life beneath my name. I did not call Owen. I did not call my parents. Panic makes people reveal what they know, but it also warns guilty people to start deleting things. I found the lender's official number independently and spent the next 2 hours moving from department to department. By 10:30, I had confirmed 4 accounts. By midnight, I had found 7, 2 credit lines, 3 retail financing accounts, a personal loan, a digital payment account connected to online sports betting. The total balance was $96,842. Some accounts had been open for almost a year. Statements had been redirected within days. The recovery phone number belonged to Owen. The email address contained his birth year and the name of the Labrador retriever we had owned as children. Whoever opened the accounts knew my first school, my mother's maiden name, the month I started working at the hospital, and the nickname my grandfather used for me. A stranger could steal numbers. Only family could steal memories. 2 years earlier, Dad had suffered a mild stroke while Mom and Owen were visiting relatives in New Mexico. I had spent 30 terrifying minutes trying to locate insurance cards, medication lists, and hospital preferences while speaking with paramedics by phone. Afterward, I created a secure family folder containing identification scans, insurance policies, medical directives, emergency contacts, and household account information. My parents had access. Owen had access, because Mom insisted he needed to be treated like an equal adult. I remembered him hugging me after I shared the password. "You finally trust me with something important," he had said. I had believed the emotion in his voice. Now I understood that I had handed him my driver's license, employment history, old addresses, and every answer required to pretend he was me. At 12:18 a.m., my mother called. I watched her name appear on the screen and knew Owen had already spoken to her. Mom never called after 10 unless someone was sick. I answered but did not tell her what I knew. She opened with, "Owen says there's been a misunderstanding. Not hello. Not are you all right. Not what happened. A misunderstanding." I asked what he had told her. Mom sighed the way she did whenever I was making a situation harder by asking for details. "He used some information temporarily because he had an investment opportunity. He thought everything would be paid back before you ever had to worry about it." "How much did he say he used?" "Claire, the amount is not the point. It is exactly the point." Dad took the phone. His voice had the firm, tired tone he used when he wanted a conversation to become a decision. Your brother made a serious mistake. He knows that. But you have a career, a house, and excellent income. Owen has nothing stable right now. We are asking you not to destroy his future over something that can be repaired. I looked at the letter on my counter. He used my identity for almost a year. He was trying to get ahead. He opened accounts in my name. He planned to repay them. With what? Dad went silent. In that silence, I heard more than uncertainty. I heard prior knowledge. I asked when they had first learned about the accounts. Dad said that evening. His answer came too quickly. Mom returned to the call and began crying. She said Owen's fiancée, Madison, did not know anything. Their wedding was scheduled for December. Madison's parents were contributing to the reception, and if the truth came out, the entire relationship might collapse. Please, Mom said, do not make a decision tonight that cannot be undone. I stared through my kitchen window at my dark reflection. Owen made that decision 11 months ago. He is your brother, and I am your daughter. Mom cried harder. Dad said I was being cold. Then Owen sent a text while they were still on the line. Mom says you're freaking out. I can explain everything tomorrow. Don't call anyone until we talk. I ended the call without answering. That night, I froze my credit, changed passwords, removed Owen and my parents from the emergency folder, and documented every account I could find. I slept for less than an hour. Each time I closed my eyes, old conversations rearranged themselves. Owen asking what bank I used because he wanted to improve his credit. Mom requesting a copy of my driver's license because she said the family's vacation rental needed identification from every guest. Dad asking whether I still used the same employer verification number. A birthday dinner where Owen borrowed my phone to order dessert and disappeared into the hallway for several minutes. Moments that had seemed ordinary now looked like someone testing windows before choosing which one to break. The next morning, I informed my supervisor that I had become the victim of identity theft. I hated saying the words. My career depended on trust and financial judgment. Even though I had done nothing wrong, I knew unresolved debt could trigger an internal review. My supervisor, Monica, listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "Document everything and do not let anyone make you feel ashamed for reporting this." I nearly cried because it was the first sentence anyone had spoken that treated me like the person who had been harmed. My own parents had spent the night worrying about Owen's wedding. A woman from work worried about me. Over the following 2 days, I built a timeline. I was not preparing revenge. I needed to know whether this was one desperate act or a pattern. The pattern answered quickly. Owen had opened the first loan after joining an online investment group that promised extraordinary returns through short-term property contracts. He lost most of the money within weeks. Instead of stopping, he opened a credit line to recover the loss. Then he began sports betting. Several charges were made during weekends when he had told us he was working extra shifts. He financed 2 high-end televisions, a gaming computer, a designer watch, and a motorcycle. He made small payments just before accounts became seriously delinquent, keeping notices away from me as long as possible. The purchases were not survival. He had not stolen my identity to buy food or medicine. He had used my future to create the appearance of success. His Instagram account showed him standing beside the motorcycle with Madison, both wearing sunglasses, beneath the caption, "Built, not given." Our mother had commented, "So proud of the man you have become." I stared at those words until they blurred. I had made the down payment on our parents' replacement furnace the month that photograph was posted. Dad had told me Owen could not help because he was saving for the wedding. On the 3rd day, a lender sent me a scanned copy of my driver's license used during an application. The image had been photographed on the pale marble countertop in my parents' kitchen. In the corner, reflected in the polished surface, was the red sleeve of Mom's favorite cardigan. The picture did not prove she understood what Owen was doing, but it proved my identification had been handled in her home. Another record showed that a verification letter had been delivered to my parents' address 7 months earlier. Mom had signed for it. The following week, she transferred Owen $3,500. I printed everything and placed it inside a blue folder. At the top of the first page, I wrote 3 words: what they knew. I met Owen at a brewery near his apartment on Thursday afternoon. I chose a public place because his text messages had become increasingly angry. He accused me of treating him like a criminal before hearing his side. He said I had always enjoyed having moral authority over him. I arrived early and sat near the front window. Owen came 20 minutes late, wearing the designer watch purchased through one of the fraudulent accounts. He kissed my cheek as though we were meeting for lunch after a minor disagreement. "You look exhausted," he said. "How many accounts?" I asked. He glanced around the restaurant. "Can we order first?" "How many?" His smile tightened. "It depends what you consider mine. Anything opened, purchased, financed, accessed, or redirected using my identity." Owen leaned back. "You brought your work voice." I brought one question. He ordered a beer. I did not. After several minutes, he admitted there were 7 approved accounts and 2 applications that had failed. He insisted the real debt was lower because he could sell some items. He said he had expected the property investment to triple in value. When it failed, he needed more money to recover. He spoke with the confidence of a man describing bad luck rather than a series of deliberate choices. "You forged my name," I said. "Electronic signatures aren't really signatures. You changed the phone number and mailing address. Because you would have panicked before I fixed it. You impersonated me during verification calls." He looked away. "They asked questions. I answered them. You used the name of our childhood dog to steal from me. Stop making it sound dramatic." I slid one statement across the table. It showed $14,000 transferred to betting platforms. Owen barely looked at it. "I was trying to recover the investment losses. By gambling?" "Calculated betting. With money borrowed under my name." His face hardened. "Your name was the only way to get enough capital." I asked why he had not come to me. He laughed without humor. "So you could sit me down with a spreadsheet and decide whether I deserved help?" "I have helped you for 15 years. "Exactly. You love helping me because it keeps you above me." The accusation hurt because it transformed every sacrifice into evidence of control. I remembered paying his rent after his business failed, driving him to interviews, covering his dental surgery, and telling our parents to stop comparing us. None of it mattered inside the story he had built. In his version, my stability was an insult. My help was humiliation. My boundaries were selfishness. "You had credit you weren't using," he continued. "You own a house. You don't have kids. You make more than all of us. I was going to put everything back. You stole nearly $100,000. You're acting like it vanished. There are assets. A motorcycle is not an asset when it was purchased by pretending to be your sister." He leaned forward. "Do you have any idea what it's like being compared to you every day? Claire bought a house. Claire got promoted. Claire handled Dad's hospital bills. Claire always knows what to do. I wanted one thing that was mine. Then you should have built it with your own name." Easy for you to say. It was not easy for me. You just were not watching while I did it. He looked at the folder in my hands. "Mom and Dad said we can handle this privately." "How long have they known?" Owen's eyes moved toward the window. That answered me before he spoke. "They knew about one account," he said. "When?" "A while ago." "How long?" 7 months, maybe." The air inside the brewery seemed to disappear. My parents had known before my birthday, before Easter, before the family barbecue, where Dad praised Owen for becoming responsible. They had sat across from me, while my identity was being used and chosen silence. Owen saw my face and quickly added, "They thought I was fixing it." "Did Mom sign for the lender's letter?" "She gave it to me." "Did Dad give you money?" "They were helping." "Did they ever ask whether I had authorized any of this?" "They knew you would say no." The answer was so simple that I almost laughed. They had not asked because they already knew the truth. Owen reached across the table and lowered his voice. "Madison doesn't know. Her parents are conservative about money. If they find out, they'll push her to cancel the wedding." You cannot do that to us. I am not doing anything to your wedding. You know what I mean. No. You used my identity. Mom and Dad helped hide it. Whatever happens next belongs to the choices already made. His eyes filled with tears. He reminded me of the night I protected him after he crashed Dad's truck. He mentioned our childhood fort, the boy whose nose I broke, the hospital room where I held his hand after his appendix surgery. He said, "You have always been the one person who came when I needed you." For 1 second, I saw the little boy who followed me down the hill on his bicycle. Then Owen added, "So come through one more time." That was when I understood he was not asking for forgiveness. He was asking for continued access. I stood. Owen reached for my wrist. He did not squeeze hard, but the assumption inside the gesture frightened me more than force would have. He believed he could physically pause me until I returned to the role he wanted. "Sit down," he said. "We haven't agreed on anything. Let go." "Claire, don't make a scene." The same phrase my mother had used throughout my childhood whenever Owen caused trouble in public. Do not make a scene. Meaning absorb it quietly. Protect everyone from the discomfort of seeing what happened. I pulled my hand free. Several people looked toward us. Owen released me immediately and sat back, embarrassed by the attention. "You always take everything too far," he whispered. "No," I said. "I have spent my whole life stopping just before it became inconvenient for you." I left the brewery and sat in my car for 20 minutes. My hands shook against the steering wheel. The Colorado sky had turned the flat silver color that comes before snow. I called Monica from work, then a fraud reporting line, then the companies involved. I reported the accounts as unauthorized. I did not feel powerful. I felt sick. There is no triumphant music when you report your own brother. There is only a stranger asking whether you know the person who harmed you and the humiliation of answering yes. My parents reacted within an hour. Mom called first. "Owen says you reported everything." I did. "Without giving us time?" "You had 7 months." Silence. Then she said, "We were protecting him while he tried to repay it." "You were protecting yourselves from having to tell me." Dad joined the call from another phone. He said the family could refinance their house and pay part of the debt if I withdrew the complaints. I reminded him that several accounts might threaten my job and home. Dad answered, "You are strong. You'll recover." That sentence changed the temperature of my grief. I had heard versions of it my entire life. Claire can handle it. Claire is practical. Claire always lands on her feet. My strength had never inspired them to protect me. It had become permission to hurt me. "What about Owen?" I asked. "Can he recover?" Dad exhaled. "He is not built like you." You made sure of that. Dad accused me of resenting my brother's struggles. Mom said I had always been jealous of the attention Owen received. I almost defended myself, then realized the argument was designed to move the focus from what he had done to how unpleasant I was for refusing it. I ended the call. For 2 weeks I stopped visiting my parents. I spoke only through text because phone conversations became emotional ambushes. Mom sent photographs of Owen as a child. Dad sent Bible verses about forgiveness. An aunt messaged that families should solve money problems privately. My cousin Tyler wrote, "It's not like he stole from a stranger." That sentence contained the whole disease. Because I was family, the theft was supposed to matter less. Because Owen knew me, violating me was treated as an internal misunderstanding. Because my parents loved both of us, I was expected to carry the larger wound so he could avoid the larger consequence. Madison, Owen's fiancée, began posting wedding countdown photographs. In one image, she and Owen stood beneath a sign reading, "45 days until forever." He wore the watch purchased in my name. My mother commented with white heart emojis. I did not contact Madison. Part of me wanted to send every document immediately. Another part understood that exposing Owen publicly would allow my family to claim revenge was my motive. Truth was already moving. I did not need to chase anyone with it. Then Thanksgiving approached. For years, my parents hosted dinner in the same 2-story house where Owen and I grew up. Mom made cinnamon rolls before sunrise. Dad smoked a turkey in the backyard. I usually arrived by 8, carried folding chairs from the basement, fixed whatever appliance had failed, paid for groceries without mentioning it, and remained afterward to wash dishes while Owen left early to see friends. That year, Mom sent a group message saying Thanksgiving was more important than ever because our family needs healing. I ignored it. She called the next morning and said Grandma June, Dad's 87-year-old mother, had been asking whether I would attend. Grandma had begun forgetting small things. Mom said this might be our last Thanksgiving with her fully present. I knew emotional manipulation when I heard it. I also loved my grandmother. I agreed to come for 2 hours. I stated 3 conditions: no discussion of the accounts, no request that I withdraw anything, and no staged reconciliation photographs. Mom replied, "Of course, we just want peace." I arrived at 1 in the afternoon carrying Grandma's favorite lemon pie. Cars filled the driveway. Owen's motorcycle stood near the garage, polished and untouched by shame. Inside, the house smelled like turkey, butter, and the cinnamon candles Mom lit every November. The mantel displayed framed photographs from Owen and Madison's engagement party. My picture from the previous Christmas had been removed. In its place was a wooden sign reading, "In this family, we forgive." Madison greeted me warmly. She wore a cream sweater and an engagement ring large enough to catch light from across the room. "I'm so glad you came," she said. "Your mom told me you and Owen had a little business disagreement." I looked at Mom. She was arranging appetizers and refused to meet my eyes. "Did she?" I asked. Madison smiled uncertainly. Owen entered carrying 2 drinks. "Claire doesn't want to talk about work today," he said. He placed a protective hand on Madison's back and guided her away. The familiarity of the gesture made my skin crawl. He had already built a story in which my absence, anger, and silence were personality flaws. Throughout the afternoon, relatives treated me with careful cheerfulness. My aunt hugged me too tightly and whispered, "You'll feel better after you let go." Tyler asked whether hospital auditors were naturally suspicious people. Dad repeatedly offered me wine. Mom kept placing small tasks in front of me as if service could restore the old order. Could I check the oven temperature? Could I find Grandma's medication? Could I repair the loose drawer in the guest bathroom? I did each task for Grandma, not for them. Owen remained at the center of the room telling stories about wedding plans and a supposed consulting opportunity in Arizona. He said he and Madison hoped to buy a house within a year. My parents nodded proudly. I wondered whether the imaginary down payment would also carry my name. At 3:30, Mom asked everyone to gather for a photograph before dinner. She positioned Owen and Madison beside the fireplace. Dad stood behind them. Grandma sat in front. When I remained near the kitchen doorway, Mom waved impatiently. "Claire, come stand beside your brother." I said no staged reconciliation pictures. Madison looked confused. "Reconciliation?" Owen spoke before Mom could answer. "Claire is upset because I made an investment decision she disagreed with." I felt the room shift. Several relatives stared at their shoes. They knew more than Madison, but less than the truth. Mom approached me and whispered, "Please, just one photograph. Her parents follow my page." "That is exactly why I am not doing it. Do not humiliate your brother. I am not the person wearing a watch purchased under someone else's name." Owen's face darkened. Madison turned toward him. "What does that mean?" Mom quickly announced that dinner was ready. She abandoned the photograph and ushered everyone toward the table. My place card sat at the far end beside the swinging kitchen door, a position usually reserved for children or whoever might need to stand repeatedly. Owen sat near Dad at the head of the table. Madison sat beside him. Mom had placed a small envelope beneath my napkin. I knew before opening it that my conditions had been ignored. Inside was a handwritten schedule, proposing that Owen pay me $600 a month beginning after the wedding. At that rate, without interest, repayment would take more than 13 years. The final sentence read, "Claire agrees the funds were provided as temporary family assistance and will resolve all outside complaints." There was a blank line beneath it for my signature. I placed the paper on the table. "What is this?" The room became silent. Dad cleared his throat. A reasonable solution. I said this would not be discussed. You said you wanted boundaries, Mom replied. This is a structured boundary. Owen reached for the gravy. It's better than dragging everyone through public embarrassment. Madison looked from him to me. What complaints? No one answered her. Mom began carving the turkey, though Dad normally did it. Her hands trembled. Grandma watched us with worried eyes. I did not want the truth delivered as a weapon across her Thanksgiving table. But my family had placed the lie beside my plate and expected my silence to bless it. Owen opened accounts using my identity, I said. Madison stopped breathing for a second. What? Claire, Dad warned. I continued calmly. He used my personal information to borrow almost $97,000. Some of the purchases in this room were paid for under my name. Madison stared at Owen's watch. He covered it with his sleeve. That is not the complete story, he said. Then complete it. It was an investment plan. I expected to repay everything. Did she give you permission? Madison asked. Owen looked at Mom. Mom looked at Dad. The silence answered. Madison pushed her chair back slightly. How long have you known? She asked my parents. Mom said they had only learned recently. I removed the copy of the delivery confirmation from my bag and placed it beside the repayment plan. Mom signed for the first notice 7 months ago. Dad slammed his palm against the table. Silverware jumped. Enough. This is Thanksgiving. You invited me here to sign a lie. We invited you here to save your family. Which member? I asked. Because no one has suggested saving me. Dad's face became red. You will recover. Your credit can be repaired. You have savings and a secure career. Owen could lose his marriage, his job opportunities, everything. He risked my career. You are established. He is still finding his way. I looked at my 31-year-old brother, seated beneath the engagement photographs our mother had displayed, like evidence of success. How old does he need to be before his choices belong to him? Mom began crying. Why do you always have to be so hard? Because every time he falls, you place me underneath him. Owen laughed quietly. There it is, St. Clair, carrying everyone. I never called myself a saint. You don't have to. You make sure everyone knows what you pay for. I stared at him. Name one time I announced helping you. You don't announce it. You just stand there being successful so everyone else feels small. Madison whispered his name. But Owen was no longer speaking to her. Years of resentment had finally found an audience. You had credit you were not using, he said. You have no children. You live alone in a house with 3 bedrooms. What exactly are you saving everything for? Several relatives looked uncomfortable, but no one interrupted him. Perhaps they had wondered the same thing. A single woman with savings becomes a family bank because people assume an unshared life is an unused one. My future, I said. You mean the future where you keep judging the rest of us? My financial security is not an accusation against you. Owen leaned forward. I could have taken more. Your limits were much higher. The cruelty of the statement was almost elegant. He expected gratitude because he had left part of my life untouched. Dad closed his eyes. Mom whispered, Owen, stop. But no one corrected the belief beneath it. I looked around the table. These were the people for whom I had booked flights, paid medical bills, planned birthdays, delivered meals, and answered calls after midnight. Not one had asked whether I was sleeping. Not one had asked whether my job was safe. They had gathered to protect the person who harmed me and called the pressure forgiveness. I folded the repayment plan in half. I will not sign this. Mom covered her mouth. Dad said, Then you are choosing punishment. No, I am choosing not to lie. You are destroying your brother's life. Owen has spent 11 months doing that himself. Grandma reached for my hand. Her skin felt thin and warm. Honey, she said, you don't have to stay where people make you beg to matter. The room went completely still. Grandma had forgotten my birthday that year, but in that moment she saw the table more clearly than anyone else. Tears burned behind my eyes. I squeezed her hand and kissed her cheek. Then I reached into my purse and removed 3 things. The first was the spare key to my parents' house. I had carried it since college because I was always the emergency person. The second was a small card listing automatic payments I had covered for them: supplemental insurance, the furnace loan, mom's phone plan, and property tax installments. The third was a folded copy of the access removal confirmations for the family document folder. I placed them beside the unsigned repayment plan. Dad stared at the list. "What is this?" "A boundary." Mom looked frightened. "You are canceling our insurance?" "No. I am removing my account from your payments. You have 6 weeks before the next bills are due. Dad receives a pension. You have savings. Owen can contribute." Owen laughed. "Don't drag me into your fight with them." That sentence almost made me smile. My fight with them. His fraud had become background scenery while my refusal became the conflict. "You wanted to be treated like an equal adult," I said. "This is the opportunity." Mom said I was punishing them for loving their son. "I am stepping away because loving him has required you to sacrifice me." Dad told me to sit down. I stood. He repeated the command more loudly, using the same voice that had stopped arguments when I was 15. It no longer belonged to him. "I came because you used Grandma to bring me here," I said. "I stayed while you lied to Madison and placed a false confession beneath my plate. I am leaving because this family only calls me cruel when I stop making your choices affordable." Madison removed her engagement ring and placed it beside Owen's wine glass. He stared at it. "Don't do this because she's angry," he said. Madison looked at him with an expression I recognized. It was the moment a person realizes the room they entered is not the room they were shown. "I'm doing this because you stole from your sister and let me plan a wedding while everyone lied to my face." Mom rushed toward her. "Madison, please." "Couples survive mistakes." Madison replied. "A mistake is forgetting to pay a bill. This was a second life." Owen stood so quickly that his chair fell backward. He accused me of planning the entire scene. I reminded him that the envelope beneath my napkin had not been mine. Dad shouted that I had ruined Thanksgiving. Grandma calmly began eating her mashed potatoes. "Dinner was already ruined," she said. "Claire just stopped pretending." I picked up my coat. Mom followed me into the hallway. Her tears had become anger. "If you leave now, do not expect us to forgive you." I looked at the woman who had signed for evidence of a crime against her daughter and hidden it to protect her son. "Your forgiveness is not what I need. You will regret abandoning your family." "I am not abandoning anyone. I am resigning from being the person who absorbs everything." She reached for my sleeve. "What will people think when they see you missing from the photograph?" The question was so honest that it almost hurt more than the lies. Even then, she was thinking about the photograph. I stepped outside into falling snow. I sat in my car until my breathing slowed. Through the dining room window, I could see relatives moving around the table. Owen paced with his phone. Madison stood near the fireplace, removing photographs from a gift bag. Dad poured himself another drink. Mom wiped her face and began repositioning people for the picture. 20 minutes later, a photograph appeared online. My empty chair had been cropped out. Madison was gone too. Owen stood between our parents with one hand resting on Grandma's shoulder. Mom's caption read, "No family is perfect, but nothing is stronger than forgiveness." Within an hour, relatives began commenting with hearts and prayers. People who knew nothing wrote that family was everything. My aunt texted me, "Your mother is devastated. I hope proving your point was worth it." I did not respond. I drove home, turned off my phone, and slept for 9 uninterrupted hours. The next morning, I removed my parents as emergency contacts from work and medical records. I changed the locks because Mom had previously entered my home while I traveled to water plants and collect mail. I closed the joint household account I had used to help them. I canceled the family phone plan and transferred each number so no one would lose service. I did not leave anyone stranded. I simply stopped being financially attached. For years, I had believed boundaries were walls built to punish people. I began to understand they were doors I was allowed to lock after someone repeatedly entered without permission. Madison called me 2 days later. She had moved into her sister's apartment and postponed the wedding indefinitely. Her voice sounded exhausted. She apologized for not recognizing the situation sooner. I told her there was nothing to apologize for. Owen had lied to her more carefully than he had lied to me. She admitted he had encouraged her to quit her job after the wedding because his investments would support them. He had also asked for copies of her identification while arranging a joint travel account. She checked her credit immediately. No fraudulent accounts had been opened, but 2 applications had been started and abandoned. Owen had not only been preparing to place a house under my name, he had been preparing his next source of access. Madison cried. I thought he wanted to build a life with me. He wanted someone else's stability to build it for him, I said. I did not enjoy being right. Every new discovery removed another memory I had once considered real. Owen's engagement toast about partnership, his photograph holding a house key, his promise that he was finally becoming responsible. All of it had been supported by hidden debt and parents willing to protect the appearance. My employer placed me under a routine integrity review while the accounts were investigated. Monica explained that policy required it. I understood, but each meeting felt like another room where I had to prove I was not responsible for what had been done to me. For several weeks, I was removed from approving major vendor agreements. Colleagues became overly polite. One asked whether I had been too trusting with family finances. I went into the restroom and cried silently in a locked stall. Owen had not only stolen money, he had inserted suspicion into the part of my life I had built most carefully. My parents continued their campaign. Dad left voicemails saying Madison's family now viewed Owen as dangerous. Mom sent photographs of the unused wedding decorations. She said deposits had been lost and asked whether I felt satisfied. An uncle wrote that Owen might harm himself if the pressure continued. I contacted a crisis line and asked them to perform a welfare check rather than allowing the threat to pull me back into direct contact. Owen was safe. He was angry that police had appeared at his apartment. Dad accused me of humiliating him again. I said, "You told me he might be in danger." I took that seriously. Dad had no answer. The official investigation moved forward, but I refused to let it become the center of my life. I submitted documents, answered questions, and returned to work when allowed. The records showed that Owen had opened 7 accounts and attempted 2 more. They also showed that my parents had known about the first account for 7 months. Mom had hidden 2 letters. Dad had given Owen money to keep payments current. They told themselves they were helping him correct a mistake. In reality, their money allowed the scheme to continue long enough to become a disaster. Owen blamed them when consequences finally arrived. He said they had promised to keep everything inside the family. Dad responded by blaming me for refusing the private repayment plan. Mom moved between both sides, telling me she understood my pain, while calling relatives to describe me as unforgiving. I stopped correcting every story. Constantly defending yourself keeps you tied to people who benefit from misunderstanding you. Christmas was the first holiday I spent away from my parents. Monica invited me to dinner with her family. I almost declined because I did not want to become someone else's obligation, then recognized that thought as another injury my family had left behind. Monica's husband burned the rolls. Their teenagers argued about a board game. No one arranged matching outfits or took photographs until everyone was tired and laughing. When Monica's mother asked why I was not with my family, Monica said, "Claire is with family." No one demanded details. I went home that night and cried in my car, not because I was lonely, but because kindness without a hidden request felt unfamiliar. The following week, Dad appeared at my townhouse without warning. He stood on the porch holding a cardboard box filled with childhood photographs. Snow clung to his coat. For 1 second, instinct told me to open the door and make coffee. Then I remembered Thanksgiving and remained behind the locked glass storm door. "You changed the lock," he said. "Yes, your mother needed to get the Christmas ornaments she stored in your basement." She did not ask. She should not need an appointment to enter her daughter's house. She does now. Dad looked older than he had at Thanksgiving. "Are you really going to throw away your parents because we tried to help your brother?" "You did not merely help him, you helped him hide what he was doing to me. We believed he would repay it." "You knew I had not given permission." He looked toward the street. We knew you would say no. Then you knew it was wrong. Dad lifted the box. Your mother cannot look at these right now. Why? Because every photograph reminds her that the family is broken. The photographs did not break it. He became angry. You always need the last word. No, I need the truth to stop being treated like aggression. Dad set the box on the porch. He said he hoped one day I would understand what it meant to love a difficult child. I answered, I understand. You loved him so much that you decided your easier child could be sacrificed. He left without taking the box. Inside were photographs from childhood birthdays, vacations, and school events. In most, Owen stood near the center. I held coats, cut cake, or looked toward him from the edge. One picture showed us at a county fair when I was 14 and he was 9. Owen sat on my shoulders holding cotton candy. Mom had written on the back, Claire taking care of her little brother, as always. I had once loved that sentence. Now I saw the trap inside it. As always. Not because I chose. Because everyone had already decided who I would be. 3 months after Thanksgiving, the hospital promoted me to Director of Compliance Operations. Monica said the way I handled the identity theft investigation demonstrated judgment under pressure. I nearly rejected the promotion because part of me feared success would confirm Owen's accusation that I enjoyed being superior. Then I realized shrinking would not heal his insecurity. I accepted the position. I used part of the raise to hire a contractor to convert my unused guest bedroom into a reading room and home office. Owen had mocked me for living alone with extra rooms. I painted the walls deep green, installed shelves, and placed a wide chair near the window. The room did not need a husband, child, or guest to justify its existence. It belonged to the life I had built. Madison eventually ended the engagement. Owen told relatives that I had poisoned her against him. She corrected the story once on her own social media page without mentioning me. She wrote that she had ended a relationship after discovering prolonged financial deception. My mother called the post vindictive. I thought about her Thanksgiving caption and said nothing. Owen sold the motorcycle, gaming equipment, and several electronics. The money covered only a fraction of the balance. He lost his apartment and moved into my parents' basement. Dad complained that Owen slept until noon and refused jobs he considered beneath him. Mom said he was depressed. For the first time, they were living directly with the person they had insisted I continue rescuing. Without my money, planning, and quiet intervention, his helplessness became visible inside their own home. They did not enjoy the view. 6 months after the discovery, Owen sent me a letter through a cousin. I returned it unopened with one sentence. Do not carry messages between us again. The cousin accused me of being heartless. I blocked his number. The next letter arrived by mail. It was written in Owen's familiar slanted handwriting. He said treatment had helped him understand that gambling and resentment controlled his decisions. He apologized for using my identity but spent 3 pages explaining the pressure of being compared to me. At the end, he asked whether I could tell investigators that he had shown genuine remorse. I folded the letter and placed it in a file. Even his apology ended with a request for me to perform another rescue. I did not answer. My parents and I had no contact for nearly 8 months. Then Grandma June fell in her assisted living apartment and broke her hip. The facility called me because Grandma had kept my number as her primary contact. I went to the hospital. Mom and Dad arrived 2 hours later. We sat in the waiting room without speaking. When the surgeon told us Grandma would recover, Mom began crying. I handed her a tissue but did not embrace her. She looked at me and said, I miss my daughter. I miss having parents I could trust. Dad stared at the floor. For once, neither of them argued. Several weeks later, they asked to meet me without Owen. I agreed on neutral ground at a quiet restaurant near the hospital. I arrived with 3 written boundaries, not evidence. I was finished proving what they already knew. Mom looked smaller. Dad's anger had become tiredness. They began by describing Owen's treatment, job search, and financial restrictions. I listened for 10 minutes before asking, Did you come to discuss him or us? Mom started crying. Dad said Owen's situation was part of the family. He has been the center of every conversation for a year, I replied. He was the center even when I was the victim. Mom admitted she had known more than she previously confessed. Owen had shown her the first loan after losing the money. He promised he needed only 6 weeks to repair it. She hid the letter because she feared I would report him immediately. When another notice arrived, she gave it to Dad. Dad transferred Owen money and ordered him to close the account. Owen lied, opened another, and claimed he was almost finished. By the time they understood the size of the problem, admitting the truth would reveal that they had helped hide it. "So, you kept choosing the next lie," I said. Mom nodded. "I thought I was saving him. From consequences. From losing everything. He used me as the thing he was allowed to lose instead." Dad remained defensive. He said parents naturally focus on the child who needs the most help. I asked whether they had ever considered that I appeared not to need help, because no one came when I asked. He frowned. "You never asked. When I said the fraud endangered my job, you said I would recover. When I said I could not sleep, Mom sent me wedding deposit receipts. When I said I was afraid Owen might use my house information, you asked whether I could keep quiet until after the ceremony," I asked. "You simply preferred the problem you already understood." Mom covered her face. Dad's eyes filled for the first time. "We failed you," he said quietly. The words did not repair anything. They did, however, create the first honest surface on which something smaller might eventually be built. I told them contact would remain limited. They would not have access to my home, financial information, medical records, schedule, or travel plans. They would not carry messages from Owen. They would not discuss my choices with relatives and then ask me to correct the resulting rumors. If they wanted a relationship, it would exist without money changing hands. Dad called that last rule insulting. "Then we are not ready," I said, standing. He asked me to sit. This time his voice held no command. He took a breath and said, "I understand." I sat again. Over the next year, my parents followed the boundaries imperfectly but seriously. Mom called every other Sunday. At first, each conversation circled toward Owen. I ended the call whenever it did. Eventually, she learned to ask about my work, garden, friends, and life, without converting every subject into his struggle. Dad began paying their bills directly. He sold his unused fishing boat rather than asking me to cover a property tax increase. One afternoon, he admitted the responsibility made him anxious. I said, "That is how I felt for years." He did not defend himself. He said, "I know." Owen violated his supervision after attempting to open an online account using a former roommate's information. The application was blocked before money changed hands. My parents did not ask me to intervene. Mom called to tell me because she believed I deserved to know, not because she wanted something. She said Owen would face additional consequences and return to a stricter treatment program. Her voice broke. "I kept believing love meant preventing him from falling," she said. "Maybe love should have meant letting the ground teach him where he was standing." I had no comforting answer. Some lessons arrive after the damage they might have prevented. I did not forgive Owen in the way my family once demanded. I did not restore contact, invite him into my home, or pretend the brother I remembered was separate from the man who studied my life closely enough to exploit it. I did release the daily wish that he would finally understand me. That wish had become another invisible connection. Whether he changed no longer determined whether I could heal. Forgiveness, I learned, is not the same as restored access. You can stop carrying anger without handing the person who harmed you another key. 2 years after the certified letter arrived, I stood in my new reading room watching snow move across the foothills. On the shelf sat a small ceramic lighthouse Owen had given me after my first hospital promotion. A brass plate on the bottom read, "For the one who always brings us home." I had treasured it for years. After the fraud, I almost threw it away. Instead, I kept it as a reminder of the role my family had assigned me. I was supposed to guide everyone home, pay for the repairs, absorb the storms, and remain illuminated no matter how much fuel it cost. That afternoon, I removed the brass plate. I placed the lighthouse near the window because I still liked it, but it no longer carried instructions about who I had to be. My life became quieter. I traveled to Santa Fe with friends without providing my family an itinerary. I joined a weekend hiking group. I hosted Christmas dinner for Monica's family and Grandma June, who fell asleep in my reading chair after announcing that my pie was better than Mom's. I began volunteering with a local organization that helped adults understand financial abuse committed by relatives. I never used Owen's name. I did not need to turn him into a villain for strangers. I simply told people that access is not consent, family knowledge is not permission, and love does not require you to finance another person's refusal to change. The most difficult victims were often not those with the weakest evidence. They were the people surrounded by relatives, asking them to stay quiet. They worried about holidays, elderly parents, children, reputations, and what neighbors might think. They had been taught that reporting harm created the family crisis, while the harm itself was merely an unfortunate secret. I recognized each of them. I told them what Monica had once told me. Do not let anyone make you feel ashamed for protecting the life you worked to build. My credit eventually recovered. The false addresses disappeared. My position at the hospital became more secure than before. The financial damage could be measured and corrected. The emotional damage was different. Certain memories remained altered. I could no longer remember Mom commenting proudly beneath Owen's motorcycle photograph without seeing the hidden account behind it. I could not picture Thanksgiving without seeing the repayment plan beneath my napkin. I could not hear Dad call me strong without wondering whether he meant valuable or simply safe to neglect. Healing did not restore those memories. It gave me the strength to stop arguing with what they revealed. Owen and I remain estranged. Through Mom, I know he works for a warehouse company and attends treatment. She does not carry messages. She reports only what affects shared family gatherings, and I decide whether to attend. He has never offered an apology without explanation or request. Perhaps one day he will. Perhaps he will not. My peace no longer waits for that day. My parents are present in my life, but they no longer stand at its center. Trust returned in teaspoons rather than buckets. Mom asks before visiting. Dad does not request money. They apologize when they cross a line, rather than explaining why the line should move. That may sound small, but small changes are the only kind I believe now. Grand gestures photographed for social media no longer impress me. I trust what people do repeatedly when no one is watching. I used to believe being the strong daughter meant carrying more than everyone else. I believed self-worth came from how useful I remained during a crisis. My family praised me most when I needed the least, and gave the most. It took the theft of my identity to understand that they had also stolen the right to define me. I was not born to be the emergency account, the secret keeper, the reliable ride home, or the person whose pain could be postponed until everyone else felt safe. I am allowed to own a house with empty rooms. I am allowed to save money without explaining who deserves it. I am allowed to stop answering calls that begin with guilt. I am allowed to love people from a distance they created. Reporting Owen did not destroy our family. Refusing the Thanksgiving lie did not destroy our family. Turning off the payments did not destroy our family. Those decisions exposed a family structure that survived only while one person absorbed the cost. Real love does not require a victim. Real forgiveness cannot be demanded before truth. Real family does not ask the injured person to smile for a photograph, so the person who harmed them can keep looking respectable. Sometimes self-worth arrives quietly. It is the sound of a key placed on a table, a payment turned off, a door locked, a phone allowed to ring unanswered. A woman walking into the snow before dessert because she finally understands that leaving the table is not the same as losing her family. Sometimes it is how she stops losing herself. So tell me honestly, if your own brother stole your identity and your parents knowingly helped him hide it, would you give them another chance because they are family? Or would you walk away the moment they asked you to protect his reputation instead of your future?